Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. Somehow, I got the feeling that the man that we are going to talk to today has been in my head for a long time and been in my heart as well. And, there's a lot of self-help books out there, and everybody's got their own opinion about how they can be a self-help. But this is the most unique take on that subject I have ever run across, and I'm really excited to have him here. His name is Robert James Maiolo, and he has written the book with no answers, which on the face of it, if you were to be in a public library or you were to be in a bookstore and you go, gee, I'm going to read this book and I'm not going to find any answers. But that's really not the case, because the answers ultimately come from within, and they come from within you. And this is what we're going to be talking about today. And I'm really excited to have him here. James or Robert, how are you today? Is it Robert James or just Robert?
Just Robert. And hi, Kevin. I'm doing great, and I am super thrilled to be here. So thank you for having me.
Oh, the honor is, trust me, all mine, because in some of the reviews that I've read about your book, one of the guys said, the day of the guru is dead. And I firmly believe that that is the case, that it's no longer about what somebody's going to stand up in the front of the room and tell you what to believe or tell you who to be or tell you how to find out who you are. You have to find those things out for yourself. And your book describes that perfectly. First of all, I got to ask you, what's your background? Where are you from? What you doing?
My background, well, my parents were born in Italy, so my cultural background's Italian. But I guess my more personal background is, I don't know, just a dude. I worked at a bank for about 10 years. Worked in like personal finance and went away for a bit. Worked in software. Um, Dabbled a little bit into real estate, and now I work back in another bank and back on like a kind of like a marketing, digital marketing kind of role. Um, and yeah, don't really have a background in writing or editorial or being an author or anything like that. This is kind of my first stint into writing. So it was a big jump for me.
I love that. I'm just a dude who's written a book that has, at least that I can count up, 50 or so 5-star reviews.
Yeah, yeah, very appreciative of the response I've gotten for sure.
It has been it's one of those things that everybody would like to understand a little bit more about themselves, how they get that done, which is why self-help books have become such a big thing, is that everybody seems to believe that somebody else knows me better than me.
Yeah.
And so because they believe that, then they buy the books from self-help gurus and how to do this and how to do that. But the ultimate thing is you got to find those things out for yourself. There was a movie once called City Slickers. Are you familiar with that movie?
No, never heard of that one.
Uh, really? Okay.
No, no.
Let me explain. At one point, there's a cowboy who's an older cowboy, and he's taking a bunch of city slickers on a cattle drive. And one of the guys says, "So, what's the secret to life?" And he said, "The secret to life is one thing." And he said, "Well, what is that one thing? Tell me. I want to know. I really want to find out because I'm having trouble in my life." He said, the one thing is you have to find that out for yourself.
Mm,
And he was like, "What do you mean? You can't tell me?" He said, It's not me for me to say. It's up to you to find out for yourself what your purpose is, why you're really here, what are you supposed to be doing, what is going to be happening to you in 30 years." And you cover that all very nicely in the book by asking a series of questions and different ways of answering those questions and breaking them down and making it a simple process for folks. Is that have I described that fairly well?
Yeah, yeah. I think the book is essentially what people have told me the book is like is it's more of a self-coaching book. So it's more of a book that you can read and teach yourself lessons in a sense. And the best way I like to describe it is that most self-help books put you in the passenger seat and the author's in the driver's seat. And the author's saying, "We're going to go here, we should do this, we should do that." This book is the complete opposite, actually. You're in the driver's seat, and I'm in the passenger seat. And all I'm saying is, I think you might want to make a right up there, or I think maybe you should go left there. And sometimes you'll look at me and say, "Are we going the right way?" And I'll shrug my shoulders and I'll go, "I don't know if we're going the right way." And I think what that does is it kind of puts you in control, and it allows you to kind of find your own answers. And before you were talking about like gurus and like finding answers from other people, I think there's a comfort in that because if you're not happy, it's comforting to think, well, I just don't have the answers. So if I just find the right book to read or ask the right person, I'll find the right answers. And then all of a sudden I'll have all the answers to all the questions in my life. And it's less comfortable to think that you already have the answers. You just have to figure them out a little bit better. Maybe ask yourself some better questions and understand yourself a little bit better. Um, so yeah, I think the crux of the book is essentially you have problems in life. Good. So does everyone else. You think the answers to your problems exist somewhere out in the world, and some of them might. But I will bet that you have way more answers internally. And I've found that the best way to find those answers is to ask questions. And the best way to find the right answers is to ask the right questions. And I think I have created a book with a lot of right questions to ask yourself.
I gotta ask you, at what point in time, because there had to be some point when you thought, you know, I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to write a book about this. And when you told people what you were going to write, and you were going to call the book with no answers, and they were like, "Huh? What are you talking about?" And when did this whole process begin for you?
For me, the whole process, I always wanted to be an author. That was just something I always wanted to be. And I don't know if we want to get into that now, but it came from a very honestly a very selfish standpoint of I feared that I was going to die and leave nothing behind. And I thought, well, what can I do that will live forever? And I'm like, well, art lives forever. You know, you can go to a museum and you can see a painting that's 400 years old, and you can go to Rome and see a building that's 2,000 years old. So I'm like, maybe I can make some art, but I can't act, can't draw, can't sing, can't dance. I'm like, I can write half decent. So I'm like, this will be my way of having something that lives longer than me is to write something. And then around 2014, 2015, at my day job, I did a talk uh, at my work in front of all my colleagues. So I worked in a strange department where 300 people had the same job and we all worked on the same floor. And I had been there kind of the longest. So I was asked to do a talk at a town hall to kind of inspire everyone to be better at their jobs. And the talk is very much similar to what the book is, where I got on stage and I said, "Hey, they told me to come up here and tell you guys how to be better at your jobs, but I don't know how to do that." But I go, "Here's what I do have. I have some questions that I think you can ask yourself that will make you understand why you're here a little bit better and will make you understand what it is you want next. And through that discovery, it will make you better at your job because you'll understand the actions you're taking day to day, and all of a sudden they'll make sense. They'll be part of your roadmap, getting you from where you are today to where you want to be in the future." And in that talk, it was in terms of career. Where do you want to be in your career 3 years from now? The book is a little bit more. The book talks about career, but it's mostly about life and life's journey. But that's kind of where the inspiration came, and everyone was really receptive to the talk. A lot of people came up to me and said, "Hey, that make a great book." And 8 years later, I turned it into a book.
Well, I got to tell you, because I think that every one of us, first of all, I believe that we have a mission when we came here, and we want to fulfill that mission to the best of our ability.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, life circumstances and things that happen to us get in the way. People tell us we're not this or we're not that. We're not good enough. We're not. And so we tend to not understand our own greatness. And so all of us, I think, at one point or another, want to create a legacy for ourselves that outlives the physical body that we have here. So the people know who we are and can remember who we are. You don't I gotta I gotta tell you, Robert, I'm a little bit older than you now, and I'm a little bit longer in the tooth. And I will talk about people and things in the past that for me and my world were very famous and had the legacy and they would be there forever. And I will say something like, "Do you remember Bob Hope?" And they'll say, "Who?"
I know.
And it's like,
Uh,
no, wait a minute. You don't know who Bob Hope is? Well, how about the Beatles? The what? Is that a bug? I don't understand. And so even if we are even if we achieve that, it's difficult. And for most people, they just give up. They just say, "Well, I can't do that." What was it about you that decided, "Hey, I can do this, and I'm going to write the book. This will be instructive to somebody else who is in the same place that you were 8 years before you started writing the book."
Yeah, I wish I had a more inspiring answer for you. I wanted to write a book and then I wrote a book. And I just didn't really let anything stop me from it. And through that process I realized that, you know what, there wasn't really anything stopping me from it. I had time. I wasn't using it right, but I had time. I was living with my, at the time, girlfriend, now wife, and when I said, "Hey, I wanted to write a book," she said, "Sick, go write a book." And when I said, "Hey, I'm going to be up late, probably till 1 a.m. writing this book," she said, "Great, write your book." And when I looked for an editor and said, "Hey, I wrote a book, can you edit it for me?" They said, "Sure." Like, there was not that many obstacles. It's just the only obstacle was knowing what I wanted to do. That was the only thing. And that's what took 8 years, is connecting the talk I did in 2014 or whatever it was, the want and desire to be an author, connecting the two and formulating it. That's what took so long. There was no there was there's no haters. There was no one saying Rob can't do it. I have a great family. I have great friends. I got a great wife. Everyone's like, "Yeah, go do it." There was nothing in my way. It was just me admitting to myself, I want to be an author. I have something to write about and I can go do it, and then going to do it. It's one of the things I talk about in the book. What if you have no haters? Where's your motivation going to come from? What if everyone's super supportive and you have no one to prove wrong? That's kind of what I went through. Um, so yeah, and I mean, I wish I had some tumultuous story of I made it through the trenches and they tried to hang me at the stake and all this thing, but I didn't have that story. I just had to make a decision. That was it.
Well, but I'd like to add here that, okay, so you decided to write the book, and then you wrote the book, and then you had somebody edit it, and they were happy to do so, and then you sent it to a publisher. Did you send it to a publisher, or did you self-publish?
Self-published. Self-published.
You do realize that to get 55-star reviews in a self-published book is a little rare.
Very, yeah, very rare. The You could count on one hand the amount of self-published books that an average person on the street would know about. You could count on one hand. 50 Shades of Grey is one of them. That's kind of the only one I know. um, so yeah, very rare. Absolutely. Yeah.
And so I do have to ask you, when you were sitting down writing the book, did it feel like you were being inspired to do it and things just were coming to you and they just came naturally to you?
Yeah. So one of the beauties of taking 8 years to write a book is that when it comes time to actually sitting down at this desk, it was back there. When it comes to that time to sit down and write, to put fingers on a keyboard and write your book, it was just spilling out because I hadn't realized it, but over that time I was writing the book in my head. These sentences and chapters and ideas were already forming. And sometimes I would consciously think about it, and sometimes I guess I would subconsciously think about it, but it was being written. So when it came time to actually sit down and write, a lot of the words were just spilling out on the page. I couldn't type fast enough. I'd sit down at 8 p.m. and finish at maybe 1 a.m., 2 a.m., and I'd written 7,000 words. Like, it was just more than I could ever thought thought I'd be able to write at one time. And the entire writing process for like first draft was, I don't know, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and that's me with a full time job and no writing experience. Um, so it was a pretty smooth process, which I'm thankful for, because not a lot of people have writer's block. A lot of people get stuck. A lot of people start and then pick it up a year later. The actual writing pen to paper part was pretty smooth for me.
I, sir, would like to call that inspiration.
Yeah,
And the
good.
reason that I call that inspiration is I was having a conversation with Neil Donald Walsh, who wrote Conversations with God and 35 other books, and he was on the New York bestseller list for 200 weeks and so forth. And I said, "Where did you learn to write like this?" And he said, I never wrote a page. I never wrote a word. It all was dictated to me. So I'm a great dictator. I take what I'm given and I write it down. And
Mhm.
I kind of tend to believe that that's kind of how you, uh, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that kind of had an impact for you as well.
Yeah, yeah. I guess you could say the past spoke to me and kind of enabled me to write maybe better than my talent. um, in a sense where if I had to come up with ideas and maybe research ideas, I don't think the book would have nearly been as well, or would have nearly done as well slash be as good if I, as opposed to what had happened, which was, going through experiences and being inspired by the people around me, what had happened to me, um, inspired by my goal of being an author, and then I guess trying to help a couple people who might read it and stuff like that. So I think inspiration is a nice word, and it wasn't necessarily I saw something and was inspired to do it. It was more when I sat down, I felt like things were flowing so well, and I guess that progress inspired me to create more progress. So I sat down more often, and it was, rather than I would write for one day and go, that didn't go very well, and then a month later get back to it. I would do a writing session for 3 hours. It would go well, and that would in turn inspire me to do another one the next day, and then another one the next day. So I think inspiration is probably a nicer word for it. Yeah.
And it worked out very well for you because, and by the way, that 8 year period was essential to
Yeah.
being able to write the book because of the experiences that you had and what they meant to you, because they meant something different than if you had those experiences and you had no reason to analyze what they were and how they worked for you, both good and the not so good, because we get to have a lot of both.
Mhm.
Would that be a fair description?
Yeah, exactly. The I wrote the book when I was 31, and had I wrote it when I was 19, it would have been terrible, because I wouldn't have had any of the experiences, any of the lessons. Even if I wrote it, back when I did that talk, I think I was 25. Even if I wrote it then, it wouldn't have been nearly as good as it ended up being, because I didn't go through those experiences, and I didn't have time to sit and ferment. Ideas are like, kimchi. They need time to like sit and ferment and like and mature. And sometimes if you just have an idea and you action it right away, it's not sometimes not as good as if you were to just like sit on it a bit and think about it a little bit. So yeah, those 8-ish years of sitting on the idea, although sometimes I think, oh man, I wish I did this 8 years ago, I don't think it would have been nearly as good. Actually, I know it wouldn't have been nearly as good.
And I'm going to submit that you couldn't have done it and it be as good because you needed the seasoning, if you will, of your
Yeah.
life experiences to be able to make it work. We're talking with Robert James Malalo, and I think that's close. He's written the book with no answers. We need to take a quick break, real quick, and when we come back, we're going to kind of delve into the thought processes in the book and how you can utilize it to take the life that you're living today, which may be you may be just pleased as punch with where you're at. Most of us aren't. And so this can give you a little bit of a idea of maybe picking up this book and going through it, because it's not a self-help book, it's a self-coaching book, and it does require your participation. At least that's what I'm understanding. So we'll be right back with Robert right after this message.
You're listening to Positive Talk Radio. We're going to take a short break to tell you audio and music creators about our commercial affiliate, Lyric Vids, specializing in creating amazing and engaging lyric videos. Are you looking to promote your videos in the most engaging way, but you don't have an animator and an editor? Whether you're an artist, musician, or business with a message to share, our lyric videos are designed to hook viewers and amplify your reach. Go to positivetalkradio.net/lyric vids. That's positivetalkradio.net/LYRICVIDS now to get started. Welcome back to Positive Talk Radio. We hope you enjoyed learning about our affiliate Lyric Vids, who specialize in creating captivating animated lyric videos. Now let's get back to the show.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. We've got a tremendous author who's written a tremendous book. I know I say that a lot, but I mean it this time, really honest, because he's a great guy. He's up in our fellow North people, the Canadian folks up there, and and it's nice to have you coming down here to say hello to us Americans, because we need a lot of help. I got to tell you.
I appreciate you having me. I'm such a Frasier fan, and your background has just I can't wait. I don't want this to be over, but when it is over, I'm gonna go straight to watching an episode of Frasier. Your background is very inspiring.
I love that. Yeah, that guy. Kelsey Grammer was a tremendous actor, and did was in Cheers, and he did Frasier and all that stuff. And he was in Seattle. That's right,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
which is where I am. And where are you
I'm in Toronto, probably maybe like 20 minutes north of the main core of the city.
now? When you started formulating the idea behind the book, and you went to your beloved, and you said, "This is what I'm thinking. What do you think?" What did she say?
She said, "Great, great, go for it."
And how
Uh,
come how come you had such a good group of people around you who supported you? Because a lot of people don't, you know.
yeah, I don't know. I got very lucky there. Um, I don't know. I got very lucky. I had great parents. I still do. They're still around. Very lucky for that. Um, and I've just met great people, and they've stuck around. And I don't really I don't really have a lot of um, reason as to why. But I've been very lucky in that regard for sure, and that really helped with the book as well. Everyone's been super supportive and really went above and beyond to like give me a shout out or buy the book and stuff like that. And yeah, very thankful for the people around me for sure.
When you are writing a book and it's your first book and you've never written a book, I imagine, I don't know, I'm not capable. I can't say that I'm not capable of writing a book, but I'm busy doing this, so I put that on the back burner. But as you're writing the book, was there a moment in time when you yourself were feeling inadequate, that you couldn't do this, and even though everybody said yes, yes, go for it, you were like, I okay, but I don't know if I can do this. What was it that turned that around into a positive, that you could do it and you could make it work? And in what, 8 months, it went from being in your head to being published.
Yeah. So the first question, did you feel inadequate? Yes, 1,000%. I felt inadequate, and it didn't really hit me until, thankfully, it didn't really hit me until I was almost done the book, because once you're done slash almost done the book, you're transitioning from author to marketer. So then you start thinking about things like a cover, descriptions, what is your Amazon page going to say, stuff like that. So then to gain inspiration, I started looking at other uh, books in the genre, and I look at Dr. Jordan Peterson, behavioral finance expert James Clear, uh, Matthew McConaughey, like all these people who wrote these incredible books. And I remember going to my wife, like, "What the f am I doing? Like, I'm a nobody. Why am I writing this book? Like, what am I great? Like, it wasn't even am I crazy? It's like I'm just delusional that I think I could be the person to write a book that could possibly even be on the same website." Um, but obviously, as always, wife was very supportive, and I'm like, well, I wrote the book, so I might as well put it out there. Um, and then I didn't know this at the time, but I would say a few months ago, I listened to another podcast with Seth Rogen, Canadian actor, and they asked him to give some advice about people who want to get into acting. And he's like, the only advice I have is very simple. If you try, it might work. And if you don't try, it definitely won't work. So give it a shot and let's see. And that's kind of towards the end. I'm like, I wrote the book. Let's give it a shot. Let's see. Let's see what people think.
I think that's great advice because you can't. I have a young man who emailed me the other day, and he was very complimentary. And he said, "I love the show. Was listening to it at lunchtime and at school, and I don't know where he was listening to it from. Probably Brushwood Media." And he said, I love the show. I love the people that you're on. Can you get somebody from Comic-Con on there? I had to look up what Comic-Con was, by the way. And but then he said, I want to go into broadcasting. Do you have any tips? And so I sent him some. And the first tip was never quit. If this is your passion, if this is your desire, if this is what you really want, believe that you can do it, know that you can do it. And there's a process along that goes with that. And you get better over time if you continue to work at it and you just never quit. And that really is, and it's hard to do for a lot of people because of that self-doubt that creeps in, that voice you hear from your past. Mine, it was my mother. The voice you hear from the past that says, no, who do you think you are? You're nobody.
Mm,
You can't do that. And but the thing is, Jordan Peterson is a good example. He was a nobody,
mm,
and then he wrote a book.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and,
He was a professor at U of T, University of Toronto, so which is cool. But like, okay, there's a lot of professors.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so now he is doing his thing, and he's doing it for a lot of people. Um, whether you agree with his ideas or his politics or what he's talking about is immaterial. The fact of the matter is that he took that step
Yeah.
and made it happen for himself.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, he took that step, and he probably thought the same thing. He's like, okay, I'm a professor, but I work at a big university. There's 100 professors. How am I better than any of these people here? But he thought he had something unique to offer, and he went for it. Simple as that.
He did, and it's turned out so far just fine for him.
Yeah, I think
um
he's doing okay. Yeah.
he's doing just fine. And by the way, if somebody wants to reach you, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, I think the easiest way is probably on Instagram at Robbie Axelrod, two B's, Robbie Axelrod, and you can also email me if you like, Rob Maiolo, ROBMAIOLO at gmail.com. Yeah, if you check out the book, I'm curious to hear what you think about it. If you want to talk more about it, happy to. Yeah.
So when we were before we started this interview, we were talking about the book, and do you have another book in the way, and are you going to continue this, and are you going to become that non-self help guru type person? And your answer was
Absolutely not.
So this is not about attaining fortune and fame and going around the country 200 dates a year and talking in front of 300 people or 500 people at a time. You've put your message out into the world, and you're going to let it sit there.
Well, so I think, yeah, so there's two parts to that. I think the public speaking part, I think I'd like to get into, because I think that the book is thin. The book is under 200 pages. If you're a half decent reader, you can get it done in 4 hours or something like that. So I think there's more depth to it that I could add on stage. I think I'm half decent on stage, and I think I could, you know, I think it'd be good to get more into that. As far as writing another book, there's 0% chance I write another book, because it is just it is just like such an insanely painful process, and you just have such self-doubt almost the entire time. And the book, in the book I talk about myself a lot, and in the beginning I don't say it's me, but eventually, spoiler alert, it's me. I'm talking about myself and some of the experiences I've went through. And because of that, that's obviously very personal to you. Like, I talk about my brother dying when he was 31, and like I talk about, or there's 32, sorry. And I talk about, breakups, and I talk about getting let go from a job I had for 10 years. Like, very deep, personal, problematic stories in my life. And then I would show it to an editor, and they'd be like, "Yeah, that's okay, I guess. You might want to change this. You might want to change that." Like, just like spilling your soul out onto a piece of paper, and having someone with a red marker going, I don't know, eh, subpar reference. Wouldn't recommend.
It's not dynamic enough. You need
Not
to
dynamic.
really make people cry before they can laugh with you.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the painful part that I don't think I can do again.
Well, we're going to talk about the book more in depth here in the second half of the show, and what it means to people who read it, and how it can definitely change your life. And but that then becomes, I really love the way that you put that, in that you can change your life, but it's up to you.
Yeah.
You can do anything you want to, but you've got to choose, and nobody else can choose for you. Nobody else can make it. And here's some questions, and here's some thoughts on perhaps things that can help you look at things in a different way, that are much more aligned with who you really are. Have I don't think I've misstated that.
No, yeah. No, yep, that's great. And I think back to the feeling like a fraud, the phony, feeling like a phony sometimes, imposter syndrome, I think is what a lot of people call it. Because of that, I never wanted to have to answer the question, why should I listen to you? I never wanted to have to answer that question. So the beauty of that is the book essentially says, I'm not telling you to listen to me. I'm telling you to listen to yourself. So now I have a great answer. If someone ever says, why should I listen to you? My answer is, you shouldn't listen to me. You should listen to yourself. And if you're looking for some better ways to listen to yourself, I think this book might help. Simple as that. And yeah, it's a lot. The language can come off as indifferent and passive, and that I don't care. That's not my intention, although it might sound like that. I do want people to read it, and I do want people to improve their lives, but I want to make it crystal clear to them that they're the only ones who, in a sense, will care whether they make these changes or not. If someone reads my book and does nothing afterwards, it bummed me out, but I'd still wake up the next morning and have breakfast and go to work. It's really up to people to make these changes, and I put it on them because I want them to have that slight sense of pressure and urgency of, if I don't improve my life, no one else will. That's kind of where that language comes from.
So really, in essence, you are the anti-guru superhero. We're talking with Robert James. We'll be Maiolo, and we'll be right back right after this. And then he's going to fly across the room. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald right here on the Brushwood Media Network. And I want to, first of all, I want to thank Brushwood for putting us on and doing what we do. We have gained a lot of listeners over time. We're on Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern, and you can just go to Brushwood Media Network, and we're also on at midnight Eastern. So if you happen to be in Europe and are listening to this, which I have listeners in Europe, believe it or not, that would be drive time in the morning of the following day. So I hope that you'll, because this is a very, very special episode, and this is a gentleman who I firmly believe that this book was an inspiration, and it was brought to him. He said, I ain't doing this again. This is too hard. Robert James Maiolo is with us, and Robert, it's I understand that it's too hard, but you've done some really good work, and you've created a legacy for yourself, just as you intended when you started this whole process.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the goal was to live forever. So, so far, so good. But yeah, the goal was to really just have something I'm proud of, and a lot of the questions in the book that there's questions in the book that I actually every question in the book I asked myself, and some of those questions I asked myself, and I wasn't thrilled with the answer. So part of the book was to get better answers for myself for these questions, and the book helped me do that, which I'm very thankful for.
Now, my story is kind of sort of similar in a way, other than it's completely different. When I was like in my early 40s, I had been a district sales manager, and I had been a national sales manager, and I traveled around the country and all that kind of stuff. I had the wife, had the house, had the kids, had the dog, had the cat, and I wasn't particularly happy. And because I asked myself the question, why am I really here? Which is why I use that in my opening. Why am I really here, and what am I here to do? And I didn't have any of those answers, but because I asked those questions, things just started to populate in my mind, and in circumstances and in experiences that kind of led me to where I am today, with over 850 Positive Talk radio shows, and over 1 million listeners a month and all that kind of stuff. But all of that was because I asked the question originally, why am I really here, and what am I here to do? And I love that was kind of how that process worked for you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people have that story, and
Yep.
for you, it happened in your 40s. For me, it happened, I don't know, maybe somewhere in my early 20s, where I was really confused about why I was here and what I was supposed to do and what I wanted to be and where I wanted to go. And I think where it came from for me was leaving the school system. Went to college, went to university, and then you graduate, and you all of a sudden don't have that stability, because in university be at this location, be here at this time, get this report done. You have that schedule. You graduate and you say, okay, now what? because people go, do whatever you want. You want to start a business, start a business. Get a job, get a job. Travel to, you know, Greece, go to Greece. Like, just do whatever you want. Which is great, but all of a sudden you're standing in a lobby with 4,000 doors and you don't know which one to walk through because you don't know who you are, you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, you don't know the actions you're supposed to be taking, and it's a very confusing time. And I think that's kind of the inspiration or kind of the crux or synopsis of the book is, you know, it's tough to know what to do if you don't have any of the answers of who am I or what am I supposed to be doing or why does this matter or what do I care about or any of these kind of fundamental questions that I don't think a lot of people ever ask themselves. Um, yeah, so for you it was in your 40s, for me it was in my 20s, but I think regardless it's the same journey.
You know, it's interesting. And when I was in my early 20s, late teens, early 20s, if somebody had given me a book for me to write down, to ask questions and to write it down, like, what do you like to do? What are you passionate about?
Yeah.
What do you feel good about? What makes your heart sing? And for me, it was I enjoyed serving people. And so I tried several jobs, didn't work out. By the way, never become a ladies' shoe salesman. It just is a terrible job. And and um, but I never could find one that suited me until I got into the restaurant business. And that satisfied my soul for that moment. And so I progressed and grew and so forth from there because that was how but that took a while rather than I had to walk around aimlessly for a while picking jobs that I hated and then quitting and trying to do something else because I wasn't at all satisfied. And so in the book, I'm sure that you ask some of those questions are what are you passionate about? What do you feel good about? What makes your heart sing? What really and if you can't sing, what makes your heart sing? Because I can't sing either, by the way.
Yeah, me neither. Yeah, the book, you know, the book's cut in two essentially, and the first half of the book is asking very fundamental questions. For the first half of the book is 4 chapters. Each chapter is a big life question. I'll tell you them right now. Chapter 1, who am I? Chapter 2, who do I want to be? Chapter 3, how am I going to get there? And chapter 4, how do I stay on track? So if you can visualize a map in your mind, map has 4 things. Step A, point A, where you're starting, point B, where you want to go, the connecting path between point A and point B, and then some sort of road or guide to moderately stay on that path so you're not going way left and way right. And that's kind of what the first half of the book talks about. Is figuring out who you are, who you want to be, and how you're going to get there. Now, the problem is if I ask you or ask any of your listeners to stand in front of the mirror and say, who am I? That is an insanely difficult question to answer. And it's possible they might never find an answer that they're thrilled with. Or they'll find a very surface level answer. My name's Robert. I live in Toronto. I like the chili peppers. I work at a bank. I like to play golf whenever I can. I'm married. I have a cat. Very surface level answers, which is a great start, but I don't think that's going to bring any great revelations to your life. So, what each chapter does is it takes these massive life questions, like who am I, and it distills it down into easier to digest questions. So, for example, who am I is tough to answer. But if I ask you, what do I care about? Or what do you care about, rather, in the third person? That's a little bit easier to answer. Or if I say to you, what do you offer to the world? What have you been through that not a lot of other people have been through? What's something that you want people to know about you? These are easier answers to find and easier questions to digest and find answers to. You might not necessarily be able to come up with it on the spot, but if you spend a little time, you could probably get a half decent answer. But where the beauty of the book comes is that when you find the answers to these smaller questions and you kind of glue them together and format them into a paragraph, they then become the answer to the big life question, who am I? So I'm allowing you and enabling you to answer these almost impossible questions by asking you smaller versions, compiling your answers, and all of a sudden you've got a pretty decent answer to who am I. Same thing for who do I want to be. Who do I want to be is tough to answer. But if I ask you, what does success mean to you? What do you want your legacy to be? What do you want your days to look like 10 years from now? What's something you've been through that you don't want anyone else to go through? Suddenly, these are easier questions to answer, and you can start to find some um, answers to those questions, kind of just sitting by yourself with a pen and paper and a little time to digest them. And those in turn will help you understand these large life questions, which you can then use to kind of build your life roadmap and trying to find some next steps and some guidance and like we talked about before, just some sort of direction, something to work on, some sort of step to take that will allow you to make some progress in your life.
That is really a fundamental concept that works, and that works for everybody. At least in my mind, because everybody's looking for that. I went to a conference one time, and there were 150 people in the room, and we had a facilitator up front, and he was asking us to tell our stories. And so somebody would stand up and then tell their story about how their home life wasn't very good, or they got into drugs and alcohol and all that kind of stuff. And we'd spend a day and a half doing that, and trying to work through some of these people's problems. One guy hadn't talked to his mother in Germany for 10 years, and he was instructed to call her. He did, and she got on an airplane and flew over to see him, and stuff like that. And some of those cool things. But then in the middle of the second day, he said, "Okay, we've been doing this for 2 days now, and I want you to know something, and I want you to know it right now. You've made it all up. All these things that you're talking about, and all the bad things that happen to you, and all the bad people that are in your life. Okay, so maybe it hasn't been great, but you're making the stories all up. Let them go, because then if you let them go, you can grow." And that's in essence what when you're breaking down those questions to make it easier, rather than the great big thing, which is, how am I going to be a superstar? You break it down into, okay, how are you going to learn how to act? Or what are you going to do step by step? And that's a brilliant strategy. That will help everybody.
Yeah, and I try and keep it just like very granular, low level, and just very tangible. I said it before, but one of my favorite questions in the book is, what do you want your days to look like in the future? So if you say 10 years from now, or 20 years from now, 30 years from now, you pick a date. What do you want that day to look like in the future? I mean, August 28th, 2045. What do you want that day to look like? What time do you want to wake up? Do you want to be driving your kids to school? Do you even have kids? Do you want to be commuting to work? Do you want to be working from home? Where do you want to be living? What actions do you want to be taking? What do you want to do after work? Do you want to go for a kayak ride after work? Do you want to go for a run after work? Like very like literally write down a schedule for yourself 20 years from now. And what that will do is you will start to get a sense of who you'll be 20 years from now. And then the beauty of that is, everyone here, I'm sure, has heard of the idea of reverse engineering, thinking about the end product and then working backwards. That will enable you to do that. For example, 20 years from now, if you want kids and you're single, you got some work to do. 20 years from now, 20 years from now, if after work you want to jump on your sailboat and go around Lake Ontario and you don't even have a boat, you got some work to do. Like things like this. It just like, again, kind of back what I was talking about university, and you leave university and all of a sudden you don't know what to do. Like it just gives you something to work on. It gives you a step to take, a map to follow. I think that's all sometimes people need. People will A lot of people, I think, will consider themselves hard workers and are willing to put in effort. It's just a lot of people are stuck and don't really know what to do and what steps to take and where to go. And what I'm most proud of the book is that if you read it, I can almost guarantee you will have things to work on. And then from there, you can go on and make your piece and put in your effort. But I think step one is to just figure out some things to work on and some steps to take.
20 years ago, I thought about that, and I thought to myself, in 20 years, I want to be sitting behind a microphone talking to a man who we can help people together to live a little bit better of a life. And that's why I'm talking to Robert Maiolo. And he's the author, Robert James Maiolo, and go to his book, which is The Book with No Answers, but it's got them all. But you get to answer them. It's it's one of it's a great thing. Robert, we need to take our last break, and it's just 30 seconds, folks. So just stay with us. We'll be right back.
They have your eyes. They have your ears. They have your smile. Now all they need is a little more of your time. Make a difference in your child's life, because anyone can be a father. It takes time to be a dad.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald and with Robert James Maiolo, and he is the author of the book, The Book with No Answers. I love the title. It's very unpretentious. It's very real. It's very down to earth, and it's one of those titles people will pick it up just to see what the hell's in it, just because they want to find out. Okay, the book with no answers, and what are we talking about here? So I want to thank you very much for being here and for writing the book. It's important. And there's another book, very skinny little book. It was called The 1 Minute Manager. Did you ever know that book? Did you ever read that book?
No, that's a good one. No.
It was very small, but it was very packed with really good information about it. Okay, so you're a manager and you just get this job. We're going to help you become a 1 minute manager, and you're going to figure it out very quickly. And you're doing the same thing. It's an easy read, but it's a complicated read at the same time, because I love books that make you think. And this really makes you take your situation down to its root level and decide, okay, I want to do this, or I'm passionate about this, and you take the steps to figure it out. At the end of the book, I'm sure that you give them some advice on how to make the whole process work for them.
Yeah, I give them a little bit of here's a couple at the end I give you a couple answers. If you make it to the end of the book, I think you deserve it. So I give you a couple of pieces of advice, and I'll give you one here, and it's very fitting given the name of your program. The importance of self-talk. And I didn't quite I guess objectively we all know that it's important to talk to yourself nicely. But it really clicked for me about a year ago when I'm still learning how to play golf. And anyone who's listening who plays golf knows how incredibly important controlling your thoughts and your mind and your self-talk is on the golf course. It is wildly important. So I had a golf instructor, and he goes, I want to teach you something about self-talk. And he goes, hit a few shots. So I hit one shot, great. Hit a second shot, great. Hit a third shot, not so great. And he goes, that sucked. You're trash. Why are you playing this sport? Why did you even come here? That was terrible. And I'm so taken aback. And he goes, don't you see how unacceptable it is when I talk to you like that? And he goes, so why do you talk to yourself like that? And it really hit me when he said that, of I would never let someone else talk to me the way I talk to myself on the golf course when I hit a bad shot. So why am I talking to myself like that? And it helped me in golf, which is nice. But more importantly, it made me realize outside of the golf course how important it is to feed yourself with good self-talk, helpful, productive, and don't talk to yourself any worse than you would let someone else talk to you. So that's probably the biggest, my favorite little tidbit I give at the end of the book.
That is really cool, because you're right. We have a tendency, because it's ourselves talking to ourselves. We talk to ourselves much worse than anybody else would ever even think about talking about us. And because of that, we then don't do we don't reach our potential of what we came here to do. I'm a firm believer that we all have a mission in life. It's not random, that we came here to do something, that we're passionate about different things, and that it is our responsibility. It is our responsibility to do the best job we can at getting those things done, because that's why we came here in the first place. Do you agree with that?
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. And I think life happens, and sometimes you go down a wrong path. And you know, uh, one of the things I talk about is like some forests suck. Not all forests are whimsical, Lord of the Rings, beautiful forests full of magic. Some forests, you get stuck in them and they're not great. And they're full of, you know, jobs you didn't want, partners you didn't want, friends you didn't want, food that doesn't
Snakes.
taste good, snakes,
Why did it have
honey
to be
pots.
snakes? Yeah.
Yeah, honey pots is a big one. Taking a job or a life because of a good pension or insurance or something. Some of the reason very practical, but reasons that some people take things, but that can get you stuck and frustrated and lost in a forest you were never meant to go down. Um, and I think the a good way to get out of them, if you want to, is to think about why it is you were supposed to, what it is you were supposed to do, and why it is you're here. And if you believe in a higher calling and you were put on here for a purpose, which I do believe, it's never too late to find that purpose. And I believe that it's not gonna happen unless you start thinking about it yourself.
I call that the golden handcuffs,
Mm, yeah.
which means you make so much money doing what you're doing, even though you hate what you're doing, that you keep doing it because you're making money, and you can't quit because you aren't going to make as much money, and it's going to be scary and all that kind of good stuff. And that doesn't work for you. I got a real quick tidbit for our audience, and that is, and you were talking about forests, I call it the 50,000-foot view. We are not allowed to have the 50,000-foot view. We are on the ground, and we've got to see to the tree in front of us and the tree behind us, and we have to trust that the intuition that we are getting, the who we are as an individual and what our passion is going to lead us on the right path. And occasionally we'll get off that path, and we will then get kind of pushed back onto the path as we go down, if we pay attention and we trust. And that's how we end up getting to where we really want to go, is to trust who we are, and to trust the intuition that we get, and to follow through in a real positive way, and to be kind to everybody, and to do all those other things. And I'm sorry, does that make sense to you?
Yep. Absolutely. That was very well said.
And but I tell you, Robert, I want to have you back because yeah, you're the best non-guru I know.
I'm gonna start using that. I hope that's okay.
You
Non-guru
you
guru.
can anything you want to, because and that's what you're doing. You're saying, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not telling you how to do it. I'm just asking you questions so that you can answer those questions for yourself. And if you are honest with yourself, you're going to find some really interesting, incredible answers.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. It is up to you. And at some point, and this happened to Kevin in his 40s, at some point, if you're not happy, you gotta get sick of not being happy. You gotta get a little frustrated, to be honest, and be like, I'm just sick of it. And at some point you gotta be like, I can't take this anymore. And at some point, you got to make a change. And at some point, you got to look in the mirror and be like, what is it that we want to do? Why is it that we're here? And where do we want to be 10 years from now? Because I don't think we're getting there on this path. I've had that conversation with myself, and Kevin, I know you've had that conversation with yourself. And if your listeners are not happy with where they are today and where they're going tomorrow, I highly encourage themselves to have that conversation with themselves. And the book I wrote will help them do that. But even if they don't, I still encourage them to have that conversation with themselves, because I think at some point you got to get sick of mediocrity and going the wrong way, and only through that will you make some changes.
Go to Amazon, pick up his book, Robert James, and I'll spell the last name Maiolo. And the name of the book is the book with no answers, which is a misnomer because it has all the answers. You're just providing the answers. Robert, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
All right, thank you so much for having me. By the way, the book is also on Audible, but I read the book, so hopefully you like my voice. And thanks, Kevin, for having me. I appreciate your time.
It's been my honor. It's been my honor, and I hope everybody will get the book and because the changes that you can make are within you. You can do it. I promise you, it happens. It happens to people all the time. Thank you again, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got.